Good morning, everybody. Welcome, members of the public and everyone to the special meeting of the Land Use Management Committee. To get us started, let's call the results.
Yes, sir. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield present.
Hutt. Here. Nazarian. Absent. Lee. Absent. Rahman. Here. 3 members present.
So this morning we are meeting in room 1010. This is not the regular committee meeting location. So I want to start by thanking the staff, especially ITA, for responding so quickly to set up a room. Council chambers was unavailable. And for members of the public that were inconvenienced by the room change, we apologize. We thank you for being accommodating. This committee used to be in regular use years ago, and then after COVID, kind of fell out of favor for a number of reasons. Happy to have you back here in this my colleagues have even had hearings in this room. You have. Okay, not so. There you go. We're going to start our hearing by taking public comment from members who have signed up for 3 or more items. Although if you signed up for 14 through 16, those 3 items are really together. We'll give you 2 minutes on those when we get to that item. So the first moment here is just for people who've signed up for a variety of different items. And then we'll go topic by topic to have speak when we're actually addressing the issue that they came to speak about. That makes your comments more relevant. So let's read the rules for public comments. Right?
Yes. Members of the public wishing to speak on one agenda item only shall have an opportunity to speak for 1 minute. Appellants and applicants will be given the opportunity to speak when their item is called. Each appellant and applicant has a total of 3 minutes to speak. An appellant can choose to have a single representative speak on his or her behalf or divide the 3 minutes among his or her team. Anyone else, including an attorney or project manager wishing to speak on an appellant's behalf who does not do so during this 3-minute period may offer a minute of public comment whenever the committee chairperson opens the public comment period for the item. Therefore, we expect that appellants and applicants have their respective teams assembled and ready to present at the appropriate times to be. Members of the public wishing to speak on more than one item shall state that and shall be allowed to speak for a total of 2 minutes. Failure to submit public comment in a timely manner before the comment period for the item ends results in forfeiture of the opportunity to participate in public comment for the item. As stated by the chair, because this is a special meeting, general public comment will not be taken. Mr. City Attorney, please provide additional guidance on public comment.
Yes, certainly. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you are not speaking on topic, or if we cannot tell whether you are speaking on an agenda item, you will get one brief warning from the chair or the city attorney. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic, or if you stray off topic, you will forfeit the rest of your time and we will move on to the next speaker. We will inform you when your time is up.
Before we begin, are there some amendments the clerk wishes to read into the record?
Yes, Chair. I'll read the amendment for item 5. This is an amendment from Councilmember Hutt. In addition to the Department of Building and Safety and the Planning Department, the amendment proposes to also instruct the Bureau of Engineering and the Department of Transportation to report back on the self-certification program as they have the relevant jurisdiction and expertise.
Okay. And then, colleagues, my intention is to do items 1 through 4 on consent, items 7 through 9 on consent, to continue item 6, and actually 5 with that amendment. Are we okay with doing that on consent as well? So we'll do items 1 through 5 and 7 through 9 on consent. And now we can move to public comment.
Council members, I apologize. We have one amendment for an item on the agenda, for item 12 on the agenda. If you'd like me to read that into the record. Okay. This is for item 12 on the agenda today, Council File 25-1083. This is an amendment to Recommendation 2 of City Planning's November 13th report. Specifically, the amendment to say, instruct the CAO to find general fund funding in the amount not to exceed $375,000 pursuant to $375,000 pursuant to the second moving clause of the motion in council file 25-1083.
Great.
That's all.
No,
Thank you.
This is just, the instruction was already there to find the money. Now this is just bringing that money.
Correct. We
Okay.
had a bid out. We received some proposals last week, and so based on that, we've informed dollar amount.
Okay.
Thank you.
So now we can move to public comment. We'll start with folks who have come to speak on 3 or more items. And 14 through 16, we'll take that up when we take that up. But if you're here for a variety of items, come forward now to the desk. Seeing no members here for one person for you're here for 3 or more items. Again, not 14 through 16. 9, 11, 12. Okay, great. Now's the time. Thank you. Welcome.
Morning. Andrew Salimian speaking on behalf of Los Angeles Conservancy. I'll speak through 9, 11, and 12. Item 9, Athens on the Hill. We've been engaged with CD15 on this issue. We just
Could you speak a little closer to the microphone so we can hear you?
Okay. Andrew Salimian, Los Angeles Conservancy, speaking on 9, 11, and 12. On item 9, we support the efforts to recognize this community. It's a really important Black history district that has a lot of history in terms of musicians, athletes, and professionals that live there. Etta James, the daughter of the city of LA, has a home there, as well as many other prominent African American residents. Unfortunately, Survey LA tends to overlook places that are culturally significant. This mic is fuzzy. This is one way to kind of address that. On item 11, the comprehensive fee update, we've been engaged with some of the downtown residents about the Mills Act and how they will be impacted. So I just have a couple of questions. One, how will the Mills Act fee structure affect buildings of different size? Items, there's 1 through 4, 5 through 50, and 50 and plus. And using the Mills Act as an important way to get adaptive reuse projects going is important. So let's just make sure that fee structure is compatible. And then finally on SB 79, we support option B, which delays effectuation, especially for our HPOCs and HCMs, as we go with our own local alternative plans. As part of the local alternative plans, I hope we build upon the work that we did with CHIP. That was done through a comprehensive community effort and reinforces some of the built legacy of Los Angeles. So those are our comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, now we will hear that closes public comment for multiple public comment speakers. Well, now, if anyone came to speak for items 1 through 9, feel free to come forward at this moment. Okay, seeing no public comment speakers for those items, it's really 1 through 8. We're skipping 6. 1 through 5 and 7 through 9. Seeing no speakers for those items, those are consent items. Call the roll, unless members have questions on that.
Yes, I just have one question on item 5, which I know is a motion that Councilmember Hutt, you put forward. I just wanted to ask, is there a way to include an explicit call out to alfresco in the moving clause? I know you call it out in the preamble to the motion, but Department of Buildings report back on safety was streamlined as it relates to outdoor dining. The report should evaluate the changes proposed by the permanent alfresco program. As you can just add that clause. On the original motion. If we could just say in the second, the report should evaluate, you say potential time and cost savings, identify eligible project types, review best practices that have implemented self-certification programs, and incorporate the lessons and recommendations from the permanent alfresco program. Is that fine? Okay, thank you.
No objection. Take that as a friendly amendment. So what's before us now is items 1 through 4 and, 1 through 5 and 7 through 9. Although on 9, there's some recommendation, there's an amendment that needs to be read.
Yes, Chair. For item 9, the following 4 recommendations apply. 1, receive and file the planning department report dated June 17th, 2025, in as much as it has been submitted for informational purposes. 2, instruct the planning department to apply for any historic and cultural preservation grants that may benefit the Athens on the Hill community and work with CD15 in this effort. 3, appropriate $100,000 in the AB 1290 fund number 53P, account number 281215. This is the CD15 redevelopment projects services fund. And this amount would be transferred to Department 68, Fund 100, Appropriation Unit 003040. And this is for a consultant's study of a historic cultural survey for the Athens of the Hill community. This survey will study the criteria for historic cultural designation and, based on the results of the survey, provide recommendations relative to the feasibility of the initiation of proceedings to establish an historic preservation overlay zone. And finally, 4, authorize the city clerk to make any corrections, clarifications, or revisions to the above fund transfer instructions, including any new instructions, in order to effectuate the intent of this motion, and include any corrections and changes to fund or account numbers. Said corrections, clarifications, changes may be made orally, electronically, or by other means.
The addition there is from Council adding some of their discretionary money for that. So with that, I think we can move to a vote. 2 questions on the consent items as amended by Councilwoman Rahman on item 5, and as read into the record in terms of those recommendations for item 9. So with that, let's open the roll and call the
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield aye.
Aye. Nazarian, absent. Lee, absent. Rahman.
Yes.
That's 3 ayes, and those are
Great, those measures are adopted. Thank you. Next, we move to item number 10. Have the department come forward to present the report, and we'll have members of the public comment, and then we believe we have someone from Councilman Rodriguez staff here, and then we'll have this committee discussion. So we'll start with the planning department.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Chairman Blumenfield and members of the committee. I'm Rafael Fontes with the City Planning's Office of Historic Resources. Before you today is the recommendation from the Cultural Heritage Commission to designate the Rowley residence located on West Hill Rose Street between Floravita Avenue and Oro Vista Avenue in Sunland as an historic cultural monument. Constructed in 1905, the subject property is an early 20th century vernacular house using Arroyo stone construction and elements of the Craftsman architectural style for then owners Lauren and Virginia Rowley by an unknown architect. The Cultural Heritage Commission found that the Rowley residence exemplifies significant contributions to the broad cultural, economic, or social history of the nation, state, city, or community as a rare example of an early residential development in Sunland, representing the period prior to the area's consolidation with the city of Los Angeles, and that it embodies the distinctive characteristics of the style, type, period, or method of construction as an excellent example of early 20th century Arroyo stone residential construction. That concludes my presentation. Ken Bernstein and I are available for any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you. Before we move to questions, are there any members of the public who came to speak to this item? If so, please come forward to the Going once, Thought somebody had signed up, so going twice. All right. Public comment is closed. Councilwoman Rodriguez's office, I believe, is here to speak on this. Is that correct? Is there anyone from Councilwoman Rodriguez's office here to speak to this item? Going once, twice. Okay. Then we'll move to committee discussion. I'm comfortable moving this forward. Colleagues, other comments or questions? Councilwoman Rodriguez.
I had a question about who brought this forward for designation, and I have in my notes, but I'm not finding it now in the report looking at it, that there was an objection from residents of the facility. So just curious about what that is.
Good morning, Ken Bernstein with Office of Historic Resources. This nomination was submitted by the local historical society, the Little Landers Historical Society. We did have communication with the property owner who expressed concerns about the nomination. However, they did not end up testifying at our final hearing of the Cultural Heritage Commission, and obviously it's not spoken here today.
There's no objections from the property.
The property owner was not conveyed that they were not supportive of the nomination, but they did not express those objections at the public hearings.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's incumbent upon them, but they were fully informed about it. Yes. Formally object. I mean, it is odd. Usually these things, I like to move them forward when the property owner actually engages.
Have they responded to any outreach?
Objections have only been delivered to us through email and I believe a call as well with one of my supervisors. Our understanding is that the Little Landers Historical Society approached them as part of a group of property owners, and that initially they were receptive to it and even allowed the preparer to enter into their home. That's all on them.
They were not prepared to let anyone into their home.
They did allow the preparer to enter their home as part of I guess, it's preliminary research in order to prepare the nomination. And I believe expressed they were okay with the nomination moving forward, as we understand it from the Little Landers Historical Society, and we only received their objections upon deeming the case complete.
Well, I mean, we could continue that and ask the guys to go back and speak to the property owners.
Yeah, I would just feel more comfortable having the property owners making this decision. But you know, I'm happy to. I wish there was an abstain. I just don't feel like I'm fully equipped to make this decision.
That's fine. Well, I don't believe that there's not urgent imperative on this. So we'll continue this item, and we'll ask them to make contact with the property owners and get their position known. Okay.
We have one.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, it's going to be historic this month. It's not, there's no development. It's not tear it down. There's not, I don't, unless you tell me there's some urgency.
Not that we're aware of. I believe the last day to act is January 14th on the sign.
Oh. I guess there is a timeline, has to go to the 9th, but that does give us one more meeting, so we could do it on the 9th. So, without objection, this item is continued until the 9th. Okay.
Thank you.
Next item.
Mr. Chair, did you want to vote on this item to continue it to December 9th?
Correct. Okay. So on item 11, well, let's go in order. We just did 9. Now we'll move to 10. Let's move to item 10. We can get the department to give a report on 10. Oh, that was 10. Let's look at that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can we just vote on this item to continue?
Vote on it to continue.
Yes, to continue
Okay, let's vote. This is a vote to continue to
to December 9th.
I think we could have done that without objection, but if you feel more comfortable, we'll vote.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Hutt. Nazarian, absent. Lee, absent. Rahman. And those are 3 ayes, and this item is continued to December 9th.
That brings us to 11. And Councilwoman Hutt, when we get there, you had a comment on this.
Yes, on item 11, I have some questions I would like to continue to December 9th so that we could go into more depth.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't object to that. Is there any time issue on that? To my staff. Okay, we can continue that without an objection. So, colleagues, let's also vote to continue 11. We can vote on that.
So that's continued to an undetermined date. Oh, number 11.
Kevin Keller, City Planning. Defer to the chair. On the fee ordinance, there is a urgency to consider it before the end of the year for council. So we had advance notice to December 9th council date, but certainly it's at the chair's discretion to hold that if there are questions. This is the item that did go to the plum committee previously. It went through the formal legality process by the city attorney, and it's now here just to re-present the item. We're happy to follow up with questions or do anything we can. One of the questions was on the appeals, and we did spin that off as a follow-up. If there are additional follow-ups, we're happy to also take that up. For the department's budget, it is something that's timely, but certainly at the council's discretion to consider.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we move the planning report forward and continue the CAO? Because that's where the questions are. That would solve the problem.
Sorry if I misunderstood. That would certainly be very acceptable.
I don't think it was explicit, so let's make that explicit. The action that we will take now is to adopt the planning report but continue the CAO. And that will allow us a chance to ask some of those critical questions, but it won't impede on the deadline.
Thank you very much.
Colleagues, any objections to that? Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. We did not hear public comment on that item, I believe. So let's, if any members of the public came to speak on that item, feel free to come forward now. You have a good sense of what we're about to do. But we want to hear from you. So, welcome. You each have 1 minute. Go ahead and start. To my right.
Sure. My name is Josh Kramer. I'm president of the El Dorado On Spring Property Owners Association. We the beautiful historic Mills Act building. We are absolutely supportive of the Mills Act. Want to see it move forward. We had a question. I'm sure Councilmember Hutt is also going to be asking this question. How the new fee structure relates directly to condos with 50 units or more. Does that fee structure apply to individual units, or does it apply to the building as a whole? Also, I believe you're a pre-2013 building, which means that we don't have a fee structure in our contract. Because we support the Mills Act, I want to make it clear that we are open to voluntarily signing amendments to our contract to allow ourselves to build, to continue to support planning, historic cultural commission, and financially support their efforts to make sure that this is done properly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am Lauren Pettit. I guess just back with what Josh said, I am a property owner at Mills Act property in Historic Park. I am also on the HOA board of that property who's supporting the Mills Act. I want to clarify, or was seeking clarification as to whether or not the fees were being charged per unit or per property. Per property seems absolutely reasonable. Per unit, I think would be a struggle for a lot of buildings and a lot of property owners. And just want to make sure that the fees are not retroactive. We too are, our contract was signed pre-2013. I cannot speak for the board at this point or the association, but I do think it would be reasonable for us to agree to sign a contract that would allow us to pay annual fees.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Is anyone else here for this item? Seeing no other members of the public to speak, this public comment on this item is closed. And I think we'll move forward. Colleagues, if you have any additional questions at this moment, what I would suggest is that we move forward to the planning report, but not the CAO report. We take up on the night to answer some of the critical questions that have been raised here by some folks who have come in, as well as we know a lot of these last-minute things are, as we've got these reports, so it gives us a little bit of time. Without objection, let's take a vote on that, moving the planning report and continuing the CAO report.
Lumenfield.
Lumenfield, aye.
Hutt. Aye. Nazarian, absent. Lee, absent. Rahman. Yes. That's 3 ayes, and this item is approved.
Okay. Great. completes that item. What's next? 12.
Yes, item 12 is the Planning Department report and recommendations relative to an analysis of the key provisions and impacts of Senate Bill 79, including local options for implementation and resources as needed by the department to effectuate the bill's requirements.
And we'll hear planning department, their report. We'll then hear from members of the public, and then we'll have a committee discussion. So we'll start with the report from planning. Welcome.
Good morning, council members. My name is Jenna Monterosa, Principal City Planner for our Citywide Policy Division. Theodore Tringo will be leading the presentation today. You may be used to seeing Blair Smith. She's out of the country right now, so we have members of her team presenting. Good morning, council members. My name is Thea Trindle, and I am a city planner with the Department of City Planning. Today, I will be providing a presentation on a report City Planning submitted on November 13th in response to direction from Council File 25-1083. This report is the first in a series of reports that City Planning will prepare in response to instructions 1, 2, and 6 of the motion associated with Council File 25-1083. Slide 2. Senate Bill 79, or SB 79, the Abundant and Affordable Homes Near Transit Act, was introduced earlier this year by Senator Scott Wiener and signed into law by the governor on October 10th and will go into effect on July 1st, 2026. Today's presentation provides a high-level overview of the information and discussion provided in the report transmitted last week. This includes general background on SB 79, a summary of the bill's provisions, information on the city's anticipated implementation timeline and associated constraints, a review of implementation options and approaches, and lastly, a review of 5 recommendations described in the report. Slide 3. As mentioned, SB 79 will go into effect on July 1st, 2026. The bill increases housing density within a half-mile of transit stops on rail lines, bus rapid transit routes, and some full-time bus lanes. Empowers local transit agencies with new land use authority to approve housing developments on land within their ownership, and permits cities to define local implementation using various pathways, including delayed effectuation and local transit-oriented development alternative plans, or ALT plans, as they are referred to in the report and in this presentation. Slide 4. The implementation of SB 79 requires interagency coordination with both local and state-level agencies. Locally, this includes the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG, the LA Department of Transportation, or LADOT, and the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, or METRO. And at the state level, this includes the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, or CAL FIRE, and the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee. The city will need to rely on these agencies for resources, including a formal map of transit stations that will be used to determine sites eligible for the bill's provisions, as well as general guidance on definitions, eligibility criteria, and local implementation. Slide 5. SB 79 establishes new development standards on all residential, mixed-use, and commercial land within a half-mile of an eligible transit stop, including sites which historically receive limited incentives in local housing programs like single-family, coastal zones, historic areas, and hillside or fire zones. The bill applies in what's called urban transit counties, or counties with 15 or more passenger rail stations, which makes LA County eligible, while some of our neighboring counties aren't. The bill does not apply to industrial land or sites with 3 or more units subject to the rent stabilization ordinance and occupied within the last 7 years. Furthermore, projects including hotel uses are not eligible for SB 79 development standards. Projects greater than 10 units are required to provide affordable housing or comply with local inclusionary requirements. Other key provisions include a requirement for projects over 85 feet to pay prevailing wage and hire a skilled and trained workforce. In terms of development standards, SB 79 creates potential for 5 to 9 story structures scaled to the type of transit and distance from the station. Projects may also use SB 79 in conjunction with state density bonus law to access additional incentives. While SB 79 offers new development standards, it does not supersede existing processes like historic review and specific plan review.
Some projects may be able to waive existing discretionary procedures and proceed ministerially when coupled with SB 35, SB 423 state law streamlining, or the housing element sites and minimum density ordinance. Slide 6. As mentioned, SB 79 increases density within a half-mile of transit stops citywide, creating transit-oriented development zones, or TOD zones. The department's preliminary analysis estimates up to 150 potential station areas may be eligible for the bill. Ultimately, SCAG is responsible for producing the eligibility map in consultation with HCD. Transit stops are categorized into 2 tiers. Tier 1, associated with standards for more intense development, includes heavy rail transit and by very high frequency commuter rail. In Los Angeles' transit network, stops along Metro B and D lines would qualify as Tier 1, as do the Burbank Airport Metrolink stations. Planned stations like the Sepulveda Transit Corridor Project, Vermont Subway, and North Hollywood Subway Extension are also included at this time. Tier 2 includes light rail, high-frequency commuter rail, bus rapid transit or BRT, and dedicated bus line stops that qualify as major transit stops. This would include A, C, E, G, and K lines, as well as proposed BRTs such as NoHo to Pasadena, in addition to bus-only lanes on Sepulveda, Venice, and throughout downtown. Planned stations like the Crenshaw North or K-Line extension, Lincoln BRT, and Vermont BRT are also included at this time. As noted in the report, the department is actively working on refining interpretations on the applicability of SB 79 to planned transit routes, and will update maps accordingly as more guidance becomes available. Slide 7. SB 79 incentives are scaled based on whether a site is a quarter or half mile from transit and whether the station is Tier 1 or Tier 2. Densities offered are around or exceed R4 density allowances in today's zoning code, and it is anticipated that the height and floor area standards enabled by the bill will facilitate construction of 5 to 9 story buildings. The bill also creates an adjacency intensifier, which gives extra density, height, and floor area to sites within 200 feet of a transit stop. The bill requires cities to waive any standards that would physically preclude the floor area ratios permitted by the bill. Furthermore, the provisions of SB 79 allow these new development standards summarized on this slide to potentially be stacked with state density bonus law incentives in exchange for the provision of affordable housing above what SB 79 requires. Cities with a population of less than 35,000 receive reduced buffer sizes, with only a quarter-mile buffers applying in Tier 1 and Tier 2 DOT zones. Note the slide incorrectly identifies this as only applicable to Tier 2 stations. Slide 8. The implementation of SB 79 is dependent on resources produced and review conducted by external agencies. Specifically, SCAG is authorized by the bill to create the SB 79 eligibility maps that cities in the Los Angeles region will use to determine SB 79 applicability and execute modeling as required by the bill if necessary, depending on the local implementation option employed. Additionally, HCD is responsible for producing guidance on the bill, but this is not technically required until July 1st, 2026. HCD also has up to 120 days to review ordinances adopted for purposes of local implementation. Given that the bill will go into effect on July 1st, 2026, the department conservatively estimates that any local ordinance adopted for the purpose of implementing SB 79 will need to be completed in March 2026. Slide 9. With these review timelines in mind, the department has prepared an anticipated timeline for local implementation. Between now and January, the department will be focused on preparing a follow-up report that will provide additional details on the bill's impact and will conduct modeling to determine the city's local existing zoning capacity compared to what SB 79 would allow. Should the City Council instruct city planning to prepare an ordinance to delay implementation of SB 79, adoption would be needed in March 2026 to account for that full HCD review timeline. It's worth noting that these milestones could always be impacted by both the availability of the eligibility map produced by SCAG and guidance produced by HCD. Slide 10. City Planning's report contemplates 4 approaches for the implementation of SB 79. The first approach, Approach A, describes an implementation pathway where no action is taken by the city and SB 79 becomes available in all eligible TOD zones. Approach B summarizes an implementation pathway the city can use to postpone SB 79 implementation for up to 5 years on specific sites, including those in low resource neighborhoods, very high fire hazard severity zones, and those with historic resources. Approach B would also delay effectuation in TOD zones that already offer capacity in a way that is consistent with the criteria for delayed effectuation that I will describe on the next slide. A third approach, Approach C, offers an option to delay effectuation consistent with Approach B, and in addition, adopt a local upzoning that would apply to single-family and low-density sites, thereby making these sites eligible for potential delayed implementation. Lastly, Approach D, or Local Alternative Plans, or ALT plans, describes an option for full SB 79 replacement program. At this time, the department recommends initiating work on Approach B and conducting further analysis on Approach C, in order to have more time to conduct public engagement and develop a framework to inform a citywide ALT plan as part of Approach D. Slide 11. This slide provides additional information on the criteria in the bill that can be used to delay or phase in implementation of SB 79. In the interest of time, I won't go into too much detail here, but we can certainly answer questions on this topic following the presentation. Slide 12. With local implementation options and bill provisions in mind, this slide provides a summary of key takeaways and special considerations. First, TOD zones that were not significantly rezoned through CHIP, our local rezoning program, in higher and moderate opportunity areas will be more affected in the short term by any of the local implementation options. Additionally, the department's evaluation of the bill and its criteria reveal a need for intensive station-by-station analysis that requires software and technical support as described in recommendation 1 of this report. With regard to the local implementation options, it's important to be aware that even with delayed effectuation, the full extent of SB 79 will need to be implemented in 5 years unless an ALT plan is adopted. Furthermore, any ordinance adopted in conjunction with the approaches described in B, C, or D will require a legislative process and a formal review by HCD. Lastly, even with the use of local implementation option, SB 79 fundamentally alters the development standards applicable to low-density zones. Therefore, changes to R1, R2, RD, and some R3 sites in TOD zones will occur. Slide 13. Before concluding this presentation, we just want to highlight some resources that we have available on City Planning's website. We've put together an interactive story map that has information on the bill's provisions and a map of the city's potential TOD zones and stops. And slide 14, lastly, these are the recommendations presented for you in the report today for your review and consideration. In summary, the department recommends City Council instruct City Planning to procure software and technical support to support modeling and the analysis needed to evaluate how local implementation options comply with SB 79 key criteria. Instruct the Chief Administrative Officer to identify general fund funding, an amount not to exceed $375,000 pursuant to the second moving clause in Council File 251083, as was previously read into the record. Instruct City Planning to initiate the development of an ordinance for delayed effectuation consistent with Approach B. Instruct City Planning to determine where and how the city may further delay effectuation of SB 79 through a potential upzoning ordinance consistent with Approach C. And lastly, instruct City Planning to prepare recommendations to develop a citywide framework for the development of a local ALT plan and prioritize adoption of any local ALT plan following both SB 79's effectuation on July 1st, 2026. Slide 16, that concludes today's presentation. Thank you for your time and consideration. I am joined by Principal City Planners Jenna Monterosa and Craig Weber for assistance with any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you so much. Before we move to questions and committee discussion, I'd like to put this up. Are there any members of the public who come here to speak to this item? So, there's a microphone at the desk here. Please come forward. Welcome. You'll have 1 minute when you're ready.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, committee. My name is John Diego. I'm a senior attorney at Public Counsel. We're a member of the LA Coalition. We are supportive of the coalition.
Hold the mic a little closer.
Sorry. Public Counsel is a member of the ACT LA Coalition. We're supportive of that coalition's position on SB 79 implementation. We generally agree with the proposed recommendations in the planning report. to delay effectuation of SB 79 in eligible areas, including low resource areas and where the city's current zoning allows sufficient density to qualify for delayed effectuation. This will prevent SB 79 from undermining our city's local affordable housing incentives and prevent displacement in low-income neighborhoods. However, we urge the committee to not include high-resource single-family sites in the ordinance to delay effectuation, unless there's compelling health and safety justification on a site-specific analysis. These low-density, high-resource sites can create much-needed mixed-income multifamily housing in high-resource areas near transit. Thank you.
Is anyone else here from the public wishing to speak to this item? So, forward, please. Going once, going twice. Okay. Public comment on this item is closed. So I just want to jump into the discussion. I'll start off by thanking planning, thank you for the presentation. Although a lot of us do not support SB 79, it is the law, and the question is how to deal with it. In my view, we can't allow SB 79 everywhere in all 20 station affected areas. For example, we do not want development intensity allowed by SB 79 on narrow side streets, very high severity zones. For other parts of Northeast LA, genuine historic districts, ensure a balanced high resource areas. We need nuanced analysis of get that and as the city as a whole, and that amounts evaluation of the area's infrastructure, especially water and power and sewers and stormwater and fire and police. And unfortunately, there's not enough time for the nuanced analysis before we would be required to submit a local ordinance to the state. It takes effect on July 1. For that reason, I don't think we have a choice other than administration, but I do have concerns and questions. Which start out with, I've seen individual maps that show high severity zones, low resource areas. Is there a map that shows map so that we can see the net effect? And my concern is that just a shows that delayed effectuation HPOZ and low resource end up turning off all stations up line and purple, and at the same time turn on the G line that transit, and it doesn't, seem to make sense. Would think that makes sense, and more importantly, is there a map that allows us to see?
Well, we can certainly produce a map that has everything. It's just a fair warning that it becomes very difficult to read. And so I think in the
trouble hearing.
We can certainly produce a map that has these.
We have the mapping. If you go to the story map, it has that. So you just go to the story toggle on. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right, but it doesn't have all of the layers together at the same time, because the whole point was to allow folks to focus in on historic resources and allow folks to focus on.
Yeah, it sounded like a mumble.
Yeah. So what we have is we have maps that we can have toggle on the layers. So all that information is on the website if you'd like to see it. What we can do is we can produce another map that can visually represent that more clearly as part of this process. So you can evaluate that when it comes back in January. So yes, we can. We are in the process of refining all the maps. If we have more information, we can produce something like that.
Great. Now that would be great because the net effect, each level is really important, but the net effect is critical. Now, even if we pursue investigation, that in theory gives us another 5 years to be local law. Can't take that. Goal of SB 79. So, if you're given the resources, you estimate how long it would take to develop the local law plans. What do you need to do that, and what stage prioritize?
Provided the resources are granted to the department, our first step is to conduct modeling, and that's really what we're going to be focused on between now and the next step as well.
No, she switched mics.
Don't touch this me.
Sorry.
I apologize. Maybe I don't need the mic. So the plan for the department is really to focus on that modeling right now. Between now and January, we need to focus on the model. Once we have those numbers, we could see, if there's a desire for the council to add to further DB, we can look at that. With respect to local options, one of the recommendations that was made in the report was that council instruct the department to prepare a framework, the framework that would guide the city with respect to local options. This would be a framework that leads to our housing element and would be sort of our North Star with respect to affirmatively furthering fair housing, ensuring that we're making decisions related that are based on equity and focusing development on high resource areas as well as areas of interest. The timeline, you can
We can't, it's a little garbled. It's enough to get the gist, but
I know how to talk.
apologize.
I'll just stay back here.
I think any approach with, can you hear me?
Your
Sorry.
voice is coming
I
up
just
more
talk?
clearly.
Okay, I'll
Sorry.
just talk.
Is
So
that?
the time,
Gender bias in the microphones.
Clearly, there's a lot of gender bias in general. But I just.
I mean, the short of it is that it's hard to say the timing right now. I think what we outlined in the report is that we start with the framework.
Right.
We start with a framework that furthers fair housing, that focuses development in transient areas and high resource areas. And once we have a collective agreement on what's the city's approach, so that it's done consistently throughout the city, then we have a better sense of how much time it takes to succeed by way of local operating in the city.
If I could just add to that, two pieces of information are important that we don't have. One of them is the actual final map from SCAD that'll tell us what the actual, where the stations are. This is how we have interpreted the law based upon not just SB 79, but also state law and also guidance from SCAD. So we need to see that final map, plus we need to do the model. And that's going to really give us really the universe of what we have to work with. It's a very short timeline between now and July 1st. So we'll be doing a lot of work. Once we have that information, if we're talking about any kind of local alternative plans, whether it's trying to do option C or what you're doing, like an option where you have a complete replacement, there needs to be a citywide approach for lots of reasons. One of them is to firmly further fair housing age requirements, as well as our housing element about where we really do want to put more housing.
Okay, and so I hear all that, what you're all saying. What I haven't heard is sort of ballpark timelines. And I know it's hard and nobody wants to come to it. And I'm not asking for hardline timelines, but trying for us to get a better understanding. There's this long window, but we know that is too long, and there's all these steps that you need to take before it's fine. The question is, when will people really start seeing this?
Part of that might be informed by when we receive formal HCD guidance, which we don't know when we're going to receive that guidance. It stipulates that we get it by July 1. And so we also have questions out to HCD related to some of the definitions and some of the details related to how local options can be. So it would be really difficult for us to answer this question right now with a lot of basic questions still outstanding to the state.
But we would have to have the short answer to that is going to be sometime early next year in the first 3 months of the year. We'll have a much better idea because we're hoping to have the map from SCAD this is for January.
Early part of 26.
Yes. We hope. That's up to them. But that's our understanding is we would have something. There's no requirement under the state law that they produce a map in a certain period of time. The challenges we have are there's 3 other agencies that have to weigh in on this. At the state is housing, HCD. At the local level, it's transit agencies, primarily LA Metro, their service levels, as well as SCAD. Right now, we're really dependent upon 3 other agencies that we don't get to control when and how it does. We do hope to have a good idea of the maps by January from SCAD. And so that's one good piece of information. We will be in conversation with all these agencies
trying to shape those maps. So we're really looking at the first 3 months of next year, really where you can start to see a lot of more information coming out, and trying to be able to shape what this could look like, what delayed effectuation would look like, and what option B under delayed effectuation would look like, what option C would look like. If we have those options up there, might be helpful since we're talking about timelines on the because that might be helpful. That we have the map up there. There we go, back there. Thank you so much. You know, we would hope to have option B, option C, that information in the first 3 months of next year, if that makes any sense. Option D is really something that would most likely occur after July 1st next year. So we hope to have that information in the first 3 months of the year. So process. Keeping in mind, if we have the other timeline up there, that under the state law, housing and community development area CDS 4 months.
Councilwoman has a follow-up.
I have a question. Is there something that council needs to do? Is it something that we need to do to help?
Thank you. Right now, what we're looking for is just more of a technical analysis that we'll have in the maps because the state law clearly defines what we can and cannot defer and where this bill actually applies citywide and stations as well as individual sites, individual pieces of property. So state law clearly defines it. And what we're now doing is doing the analysis to refine that and provide information to you. Thanks for that question. We're not going to have that option of basically, redefining some of the parameters of the bill, if you will. Like the very high fire hazard severities are what they are. Local historic properties are what they are. And we're not going to, and lower resource areas are what those are under the maps that the state provides us. So it's really about a lot of refinement of analysis.
Councilwoman Rao.
So I had a question about these approaches because I wasn't able to quite understand from the report the difference between approaches B and C. And it seems like approach D, we have to do it, right? Like approach D is just part of what we need to be doing in order to move this forward.
Approach D would be developing a local op plan that would then be in effect by until 2037. The option to delay effectuation right now would allow us up to 5 years, up to 2030. At that point, we can choose as a city to allow SB 7 on, or we could develop a local alt plan at that time. That would be in effect until 2037. The difference between B and C is that B is pointing to the specific areas within the bill where we can put pause or allow phased-in approach. That's talking about low resource areas, very high fire hazard severity areas, historic areas where the bill allows us to do a full sweep to carve those out, whereas a local op plan, we can only look at 10%. According to what? We can only look at 10%. When we do a local alt plan in the future, with respect to local historic resources, we can only carve out 10% of local resources. Whereas today, if we wanted to do delay effectuation, we could remove all locally designated historic resources for up to 5 years. Basically, what this allows us to do is put a pause on it so that we can look at the decisions and make those decisions that will include public outreach and discussions related to historic resources, related to low resource areas, and reduce the capacity that SB 79 allows us to reduce, or have it, allow up to 100% of what it produces.
And if I can just add, if we go back to the slide, if this, how I kind of, the slide that has the 4 options. This is how I look at it. So option A is we don't do anything, and SB 79 goes into effect fully as it's written.
Yeah, so option A, I think, is not possible for a city which has, to me, significant high fire severity zone. This density is not possible and wouldn't be appropriate. Right?
And then option B, and correct me if I have this wrong, delays only those areas that you are allowed to do a delay, which would be very high fire hazard severity zones, local historic, lower resource from the state maps. I think 1 foot sea level rise, and a few others. But the remainder of the areas would go into effect just in SB 79. Okay, so that's something where you may see, you may have, and I believe there is some issues, and so I think densities in there
Right.
too.
So we can go to the next slide. And so what you can also do is delay implementation if we have our current zoning allows enough capacity that it wants to be built. So if you look at a TOD zone, quarter and a half mile, if 33% of the sites in that zone have 50% of the density that SB 79 allows, we could turn that on. In addition to that, it has to be 50% of the density as well as 75% of the overall facility density allows.
So I look at
No, sorry. So this is for option B or option C?
This is for option B. Let me just explain a little bit. So we need to do analysis to see if we where we put that first bullet, where we have existing capacity, we could potentially put a pause in SB 79. Once we do the analysis, we'll see what the gaps are. Where are there stations that they don't have this? And so if we do nothing, SB 79 will do nothing. With that, it's a decision for council. If we want to upzone those areas, which is a permanent ordinance, so that they do hit that first bullet and they can be delayed for up to the 5 years.
That's option B then.
no.
That would be option
So
C.
option B, if we can go back to the other one, option B I see is it says partial delayed effectuate. Okay. So if you meet that criteria in the previous slide, then those areas will not go into effect until 2030, which is the next RENA cycle. But the balance of the site could go into effect July 1st, as written in SB 79, right? So there is no local thing. So what you could have is you have station areas, many station areas, because of the other criteria, which is because they're very dense, they may have very high fire hazard severity zones, they may have historic districts, they may have all these other things in there, that the entire station may not apply, right? Just be whatever is the citizen. You'll have some stations which maybe because of very high fire hazard severity will be partially not included in it. The other parts would be just as written in SB 79. What option C does is it tries to pair together delayed effectuation with, in essence, a citywide upzone, if you will. And if you pair those together, so you'd be changing what was in SB 79, you would have, you would, in essence, delay the effectuation of 2030. But the way you've done that would be citywide, but the only way you do that is through a partial upzone. I think that if you look at any of these scenarios, no matter what you're talking about, is actually, you're talking about a significant upzone in the city, which path you take.
To follow up on
Yeah,
what it seems really choosing between A and B, the C and D, you can't really do right away. C and D are going to, we choose B and then start looking at the upzoning and everything else, but we can start looking at the alternate plans, which we want to do. It's not like we could vote and say, let's do D right now. We can't do it.
No.
It's not like it's not, we can't actually, it's a bit of a false choice. Like with council, we can't choose option D right now because it's impossible. And the same thing with C. We can't choose that right now because it's not available. So we choose option B, and then that gives us the opportunity to move forward to do what's in C and what's in D, right?
Yeah, and
is that more of a fair analysis? Because it doesn't really feel like choosing.
Well,
and yeah, just to clarify that further, it feels like to me, I don't have this from the way you're describing it right now. Actually, go ahead and answer that question. I don't want.
Well, the question that we have that we're talking right, and for C, what we're looking at is we would not know that until early next year. So we're talking about whether it's the difference we're talking about today or whether you're talking about next July 1st. Today, all we do is meet today. Right?
So we really don't have 4 options
today.
We have to choose between A and B. I don't think we're all set on B, and then working on C and working on D. That's the question. Right. Obviously, we don't want to sit here for 5 years. I mean, that would bill, but the question is how do we do it in a reasonable measure, deliberative?
So I had a follow-up question to that, which I think feels like the way that I have understood your report as well. If we do option B, does that mean that areas that are not in very high fire severity zones and that are also not HPOZs automatically will get upzoned?
And the other categories of low resource, 1 foot level, sea level rise.
They will get
with the
upzoned right
density was
away.
already there. Yeah.
So it feels like what we're doing. So this, I just want to be very clear because I have, we have a lot of us represent communities. Actually, both you and I, Councilmember Bloomfield and I, both represent neighborhoods in the valley that have been vocal about their fears about the impact of SB 79. But we also don't have a lot of HPOZs in the valley, right? So it feels like what you're doing by picking option B and not thinking about option C is that you're putting the brunt of this on resource neighborhoods in the valley and not looking at how we can work on actually making it more equitable even among our high resource areas that we're all taking on increased growth. And I'm not comfortable with moving that forward. Like that doesn't seem fair.
And so we're talking about today, and what I was about to say partially through that, D is something that's is unlikely to happen between July 1st. C is an option that we would have to come back early next year. When we talk about having more information at the beginning of the year, that would be option C.
So I feel like I can't support my district and making sure that it gets that in the basin we're making those decisions and in the valley we're making those decisions that make sense. But we have to be able to say to our constituents, yes, I understand that this is a big change and we fought for you to make sure that this is as thoughtful and equitable as possible. I wouldn't be comfortable with just voting for option B. We'd have to also do option C and then make sure that we're asking those questions about what those maps look like before we have that decision.
And I believe that's what the report says. So when the report says we do B now, we actually recommendation would be now, we bring information back to you for option C and potentially D. But option C is specifically put forward as an option to do just what you said. So option C was specifically put forward is to say, working within SB 79, is there a way that we can have a local solution for those areas that are outside of those that are specifically delayed?
Right. Option B is identifying where the bill clearly says we can delay. We're, like I mentioned before, we're going to be doing heavy modeling analysis to see what are other stations that are outside of those categories that could potentially be delayed because of their existing capacity.
But this is
if that's the desire.
My question is not like Councilmember Blumenfield made this very clear in the beginning. Like we all agree there's a housing crisis. We may not all have agreed with the approach of SB 79, but I think every single person agrees that we need more housing. And we have to find smart ways of bringing it here. So our goal is not to delay this indefinitely. That's not the goal. The goal is to figure out how to do it how to achieve the goals of the bill the right way for our city. And so I'm not looking necessarily for loopholes to get out of the bill. What we're saying is let's do it right. And so that's why I'm saying I just want to say again, it's a little late, it's laid out a little confusingly to me in the report. I would feel very uncomfortable moving forward with exclusively option B if that means that my communities have instant impacts that are not explored. To me, option C feels like it makes much more sense for the whole city, particularly for the back.
Right.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think without having done that analysis, it wasn't something that we could fully provide you that information with. There's no need. This is just different options, right? I think we as department are on board with approach C. We just don't have the information to show you, what existing capacity is and what SB 79 would allow and what we would need to do to upzone all these resource centers.
We have the same goals. This is exactly why we came up with C. C is not specifically in the legislation, but the bill authors have agreed that this is an option. So this was a way that we spent a lot of time to try to come up to just what you said, is to try to come up with local solutions, which is not part of it. So, and that kind of gets to no matter what solution you have, there's going to be significant rezone come July 1st. It's just how does it come about? Is it we do nothing and it's the entire statement? Or is it B where we delay part of it, but the rest of it is exactly what the bill says? Or come July 1st, is it option C, where we delay a part, but we do an upzoning with that. And so we get to come up with our local solution for the upzone areas. That's really A, B, and C.
I would look for option C because it makes sense.
But you're saying we can't do C right away.
Well, we need to do the analysis. And one thing to keep in mind with C, or with C, is once you do a local rezone program, you are subject to SB 330 with the up and down zone. So there will be some, if you want to go into a later modification like option D, there would be some challenges with that.
So if I could help clarify, I think that the department envisions executing option C as something that would be possible by the July timeline. It hasn't been fully realized as a recommendation in this report because there's a lot of math that would need to be done to really articulate how is option C something that could be carried out across these different stations where there's a need to balance out the number of housing units. But I think that we do see a singular ordinance that would carry with it some measure of an upzone could be established that would allow us to accomplish option C within the time frame to do delayed effectuation.
Right, but there's nothing to vote on for option C. Like this is, as I said, I think it's a false choice here. It's we can't vote on C or D because it doesn't exist. What we could vote on is maybe some hybrid where we're saying we're going to move forward with the delay. We're instructing you to put together a program of updating, put together a program of an alternative.
Yeah, and we're going to
zones. I mean, like so that we can have those things as options because we're not comfortable with potentially what happens to our areas if you just do D because it leaves out whole swaths of areas that are going to be automatically hit by SB 7.
The most important thing that council could do today is just authorize us to do the analysis. So getting the software and that's the important thing to do today. We will be bringing everything back to you early next year. So this is a preview of the approaches. You do not have to choose A, B, C, or D today. In fact, C and D, you're not going to know what they are today. You know what A and B are today. You don't know what C and D are today.
Don't we have to choose the delay at this point? Otherwise, 79 goes into effect.
No, if I can just jump in, I think you're correct in saying that this is a little confusing. The whole point of the report that was presented to you today was to really explain SB 79. Was really to explain SB 79, the rules of SB 79. Ultimately, these are our options as a city. It doesn't make sense for us to make a decision on these options right now without having that second level of analysis. In our January 5th report is when we'll have numbers. We can look at the capacity in all these different categories. We can look at existing capacity, and we can paint options for you as a council of where you might like to see upzoning in low density areas. And then you can have a decision based on that information and what steps you need. This is to lay out ultimately what are going to be the decisions.
And you don't have to start making the decision until around the beginning of March, right?
Correct, but that would be instruction to planning so that we can start on this work.
So what do you need from us? I mean, I have some recommendations with instructions that we've worked on. I assume you need those. You know, and specifically that is instruct the department to initiate and procure software and technical support needed for mapping and modeling analysis required to evaluate how potential implementation options and criteria. I can read these. You all have put them together. So I'm assuming you need those instructions. What else do you need from us today? Do you need a decision on implementation options? No.
Not at this time.
Okay. So all you need is the instructions.
The biggest decision funding was the 2 recommendations to allow us to procure software and to have the funding allocated so that we can actually have a contract and start that analysis that'll begin as early as December so that it's ready for
Okay, I'm going to read in the recommendations that are based on what you asked that you need, so everybody hears that, and then we can potentially just vote on those recommendations and not on the options. Recommendations would be adopt recommendations of the planning department in November 13 as follows. Note instruction 2 will be amended to include specific amounts. 1 is to instruct the city department of city planning to initiate procure software technical support needed for mapping and modeling analysis required to evaluate how potential implementation options meet criteria for delayed effectuation for transit oriented development. Alternative plan 2 instruct the CAO to find general funding pursuant to the second clause of the motion in council file 25-1. 3. Is it?
What is it?
Okay. Okay, and that would also include amending recommendation number 2 of the city planning's report number 13 to instruct the CAO to find general fund funding. Oh, then this is the one you mentioned earlier, in the amount not to exceed $375,000 pursuant to the second moving clause of the motion. The council filed CF 45-1083. Third, to instruct the Department of City Planning to initiate the development of an ordinance consistent with approach B described herein to delay effectuation of Senate Bill 79 areas, including very high fire severity zones, sites vulnerable to 1 foot sea level rises, sites with low historic. Although that's not. Yeah, I'm reading it as I'm listening. Sorry. And we don't need that part. This is what planning was asking for in terms of that's understood. It doesn't need to be voted on. Want to see a better plan, full plan. Then to instruct city department planning based on the modeling analysis that was completed in construction in section F of the third moving clause of the motion to report back on where and how the city may further delay effectuation 79 potential adoption of zoning ordinances alongside the delayed effectuation ordinance in certain areas consistent with approach C described herein. 5, to instruct the Department of City Planning to make recommendations for the development of a citywide framework for the initiation and development of a local TOD alternative plan consistent with approach D. So you're including all of them here. Described herein with the instructions outlined in the last clauses amended by the Planning and Land Use Management Committee on October 28 to prioritize adoption of local plans following both SB 79's effectuation on July 1, 2026 and the delayed effectuation ordinance affirmatively furthering fair housing objectives and the goals of 2021 2029 housing element. The mouthful, you all know it because you all basically wrote that. So, President Robin.
Yeah, so I would say of those recommendations that were in the report, I am not comfortable with moving forward with item 3 alone because option C, approach C, is not mentioned anywhere here. So I would just find a way to include the high fire severity zones, low resource areas, like find a way to exempt those, but also to in instruction 5 to make a recommendation for the development of a citywide framework for the local TOD alternative plan or for approach C. That's all. Just include approach C in the
and it was partially included in instruction 4 where it said how the city may further effectuate SB 79 through potential adoption of zoning ordinances alongside the delayed effectuation ordinance in certain areas consistent with approach C described here.
Right.
But we're trying to be. I mean, the words are important, but making sure you understand. I think we're all coming from the same place here.
I think I understand where the committee is, and I think we're all moving in the same direction. I think on this is let's first do the analysis because we need to know the station areas and we need our capacity. Once we understand that, we come back with the city council early next year with the options and really understanding the city council. This committee is very interested in option C and seeing how that we can have a local solution combined with a partial delayed effectuation. We're happy to do that. I hear you loud and clear. I think we all hear you loud and clear. And that's actually where we've been aligning our analysis. So nothing here is anything different, out of line with how we
members of the public to understand we are not doing A. We're not just swallowing SB 79. We are trying to do it in a measured approach, and delaying where we can approach. Yep. Just cut through all the noise because a lot of people are listening for that fact.
Right.
Just put that out there, and then but do it consistently with these other options. Okay. Is that clear enough to vote on? Let's call the roll. Field aye.
Hunt, aye. Raman. Yes. 3 ayes, and this item is approved as amended.
Okay, ready to stop it. That takes us to number 13. Okay, item 13. Could ask the city attorney to present the report. We'll then hear from the public. Okay, if we could restore order here and let's go with the report. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Good morning, honorable chair member and council members. My name is Lonnie Lee. I am with the city attorney's office. What is before you today is the codification of the 81 that has been modified to include the labor standard chosen by the city council for projects over 85 feet. And with regard to these ordinances made with regard to virtual activity and building on. Apologies, can you hear me now? And we're happy to answer any questions.
Great, and I understand there is a department has a correction. Want that as an amendment?
Yes, we do. Read it into the record.
Yes, please.
This is a technical correction on the affordability criteria, the rent schedules that get used with the program. It's a bit complex. Aligned with the original version the Planning Commission approved, we recommend just a clause be inserted into the affordability criteria in LEMC section 1222 840H7. It'll read affordability criteria. The affordable rents must either all be set to be affordable to lower income households with rents or housing costs that are affordable to lower income households, or at least 20% of the restricted affordable units in the project shall be set, and that remains consistent. So it's that part I just read. Needs to be added to that Chapter 1 version and the Chapter 1A version in LEMC section 9.48C1A2. The same clause would be added. The affordable rents must either all be set to be affordable to lower income households with rents or housing costs that are affordable to lower income households, or at least 20% as the language exists in the law.
Okay. Before we go into committee discussion, are there any members of the public who came to speak on this item or wish to speak on this item? If so, please come forward. And you have 1 minute. Welcome.
Hello again, committee members. Jonathan Yeager, Senior for the Public Counsel. We are supportive of streamlining 100% affordable housing, but believe a few small amendments would ensure that it produces housing that's actually affordable and doesn't cause unintended harm. For reference, we submitted a letter this morning. A section of our letter referenced the section where there was a technical correction, so I'm glad to see that some of that was clarified. But the exclusion for RSO sites is an essential part of this, but unlike any other streamlining law that we're aware of, it asks the question of whether there have been 12 tenant-occupied RSO units on a site. Existing state streamlining legislation separately asks two different questions: whether there are rent-stabilized units and whether there are tenant-occupied units. The local ordinance thus creates a perverse incentive to hold units vacant. If there are 11 or fewer occupied units on a site, it will be eligible for streamlining, regardless of how many otherwise existing units, potentially vacant units, are on that site. We recommend amending it to only look at the RSO units with no inquiry into the tenure of the tenancies.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to this item? Yeah, I would ask the department to respond to the comments. Obviously, we don't want to have an unintended consequence of perverse incentive to keep units open. Is there a response to public comment?
I know that we have a direct response to that, but the ordinance does respond to mayor's 81. Our instruction was to codify that language. So that's where we got our instruction, our policy direction.
Kevin Keller, City Planning. So I know we also discussed this when it was at previously, but the ordinance does include a prohibition for projects that impact 12 RSO units. That is in addition to any specific requirements that are part of a program that is used via ED1. If you're using the density bonus program, the AHIP program, et cetera. But that is how it is phrased, and that is consistent with how ED1 has been operating. I think one of the things I know that we were asked to research and come back with is some of our history on RSO units and the multiplier of how many RSO units have been launched, how many are being produced, and how many also have been at that threshold of 12 or more. The issue of vacant units, I believe, is something of an implementation question. It's an important one, but that is not a change that's here in terms of how this particular ordinance is written. And other programs like SB7 also include carve-outs for RSO units. So we have the residential protection ordinance, but I think we continue to look at that.
I can just add from a policy point of view that the concern that units could be held vacant it's a concern that I think exists in the existing laws. So all our housing protection ordinances, our resident protection ordinance, the state law, the Housing Crisis Act, they all kick replacement in when a unit has been either occupied or occupied within the last 5 years. The same is with the rent stabilization ordinance, and the Ellis Act also sort of gets you out of those regulations when it's been vacant for 5 years. So I'll just say that is the 5-year sort of look back period that is in this law is consistent with those other state and local laws, but acknowledging the concern that was raised.
So a problem, but one that we may not solve on this bill, but get solved overall. We certainly want to move this forward because the emergency, as a order, mayor officially ended, and so we don't have ED1 unless we cut. So it's really important for us to move this forward as quickly. Just want to confirm the 85 feet height requirement aligns with standard SB 79.
Yes, Councilmember, that was the direction from council to make sure we align the definition. And yes, to the best of our understanding, that is 85 feet measured by the building code, which is a statewide standard rather than at every city doing their local zoning version. So we believe this is consistent with the laws.
Colleagues, any comments or questions? Councilman Robin.
I did have a question about different rent schedules used by people who are building ED1. I just wondered whether you could clarify, like, of the buildings that have been moved forward and entitled, which rent schedules are they using? Because I know there's been differences in different. And has the rent schedule impacted the effectiveness of the ordinance?
Councilmember Matt Glesney, planning. I don't have the details on the exact rent schedule used by all the projects, but I can tell you the amendment that we introduced helps to make sure, again, that it's as flexible as we can be and aligns with the policy. So the amendment allows a different option. The one that we read in, yeah.
Allows different options.
Allows more flexibility, different options. Well, I'll say the vast majority do what is considered a mix and match, about 15%, 20% moderate, and then they've actually mixed rent schedules. That's what we're allowing an amendment that is affordable under to low income.
So what
not
you
moderate.
suggested, so just your amendment allows flexibility to make the largest projects possible, whether you want to say that.
Yes, it says if you're, so sort of 2 doors you can go in, so just one door
keeps both doors open.
It opens up a door and shut in the form legality.
Great. Okay, so the recommendation is going to be to find in the independent judgment of the decision maker based on the whole of the record, including EIR, State Clearinghouse number CH number 2021010, certified on 2021. Addendum number 1, adopted on June 14th, adopted on December 10, 2021. this with were analyzed. No supplemental EIR is required pursuant to sequel guidelines section 15162 and 164 to adopt the draft ordinances without changes to the project. Circumstances or new information will require a future review or due to the involvement of new significant impacts or more significant impacts than those identified in the EIR. Public Resources Code 21166, sequel guidelines 15162 and 15164. B, to request the city attorney to prepare legality for chapter 1 and 1A that are retroactive to the date of November 18th. So the commission apply as of 2025 in order to coincide with the mayor's lifting of emergency homelessness on that day. 1-5. Call roll. Plus the amendment of the planning department as amended. Yes.
Activity amendment? I'm not sure.
Retroactivity amendment? That was in there. Okay, so as amended, as read, let's call the roll.
And just for the record, if I could go ahead and have a copy of the amendment that was read into the record, please. Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Aye. Raman.
Yes.
3 ayes on that item is approved as amended.
Next, we're going to move to items 14, 15, and 16. For purposes of public comment together. Item 14 is a confidential city attorney report regarding litigation and judgment. Item 15 is a building and safety report regarding whether the Oceans 11 RV park meets the performance standards of AMC, and a confidential city attorney report. Item 16 is 245 motion by Councilmember McCosker to serve over the city planning commission's reconsideration appeal. City attorney has submitted confidential reports. 15, in open session from the planning board, safety, the applicant, appellants, and members of the public, and Councilmember McCosker if he's here or his staff. And then we will go into a closed session with the city attorney. And then we will come back into open session to vote on all of the things. So again, we'll start with the planning department, building and safety, and the applicant, and the appellant, then members of the public, and potentially McCosker or his staff. Then we go into open session, we discuss this, we'll come back to open session. And since these 3 items, once when the public comes up, you will be given 2 minutes because there are multiple items there, so you have up to 2 minutes to talk about any portion of all 3 items. So let's begin with the planning department to present. Welcome.
Good morning, council members. Phyllis Nathanson, Associate Zoning Administrator, City Planning Department. This is a second Charter 245 for the City Council to consider a City Planning Commission decision on the building and safety appeal pertaining to permit number 23020 10,000-02232, which is currently closed, and supplemental permit number 24026 10,000-00086, which has not yet been issued. The applicant is pursuing a use of land building permit for a new 46-space RV park on a property zoned R1 in Harbor City as a public benefit project under Municipal Code Section 14.00A7, proposed as compliant with the required performance standards. The building and safety permits were appealed by neighbors, the concerned residents of Green Meadows West, Harbor City. A brief timeline of the appeals. On August 2nd, 2024, the Department of Building and Safety denied an appeal of the permits, and the building and safety determination was appealed to the Director of Planning. On April 9th, 2025, the zoning administrator, on behalf of the Director of Planning, denied the appeal of the building and safety determination finding that there was no error or abuse of building and safety's discretion in preparing to issue a supplemental building permit. The director's determination was appealed to the City Planning Commission. On June 26, 2025, the City Planning Commission denied the appeal and sustained the director's determination. On July 30th, 2025, the City Council asserted jurisdiction over the matter. On August 19, 2025, the City Council considered the matter and remanded the City Planning Commission's denial of the applicant's appeal back to the City Planning Commission for further review and consideration. It also requested the city attorney to provide a report advising whether the application for the RV park requires a conditional use permit, or if not, why it should be processed as a public benefit project. And also instructed the Department of Building and Safety to provide a written response to the specific allegations raised in the appeal or at the Plum Committee hearing that the proposed RV park fails to meet any of the applicable performance standards. On October 9th, the City Planning Commission denied the appeal in part and granted the appeal in part. And November 12th, 2025, the City Council asserted jurisdiction over the matter a second time, which is why the matter is before you today. And the appeal centered on two main issues. Is a city-issued conditional use permit required for all new RV parks, or is an RV park approved ministerially as a public benefit project if it complies with the required performance standards? And number two, does the proposed RV park comply with all of the required performance standards? So in its most recent action on October 9th, 2025, the City Planning Commission denied the appeal in part, sustaining the determination of the zoning administrator on behalf of the Director of Planning that a city-issued conditional use permit is not required for a new RV park as a public benefit project if it complies with the required performance standards, and granted the appeal in part, finding the Building and Safety Department erred in preparing to issue the supplemental building permit because performance standard numbers 3, 4, and 5 were prematurely cleared. So in explanation, performance standard number 3 requires an 8-foot-high block wall or a wrought iron fence around the perimeter of the property, but not extending into the required front yard setback. The property is subject to a prevailing setback, which must be determined by a plan check engineer. Plans show a 20-foot front yard setback. This project would be compliant if Building and Safety determines the prevailing setback is 20 feet or less. Then performance standard number 4 requires that the front yard setback is at least as deep as the setback required by the zone. And again, this property is subject to a prevailing setback, which must be determined by a plan check engineer. The plans show a 20-foot front yard setback, and the project would be compliant if Building and Safety determines that the prevailing setback is 20 feet or less. And the third item, performance standard number 5, a 10-foot landscape buffer along the periphery of the property with an automatic sprinkler system. And according to this requirement, there can be no project elements in the 10-foot buffer area. However, the plans show trash enclosures in portions, small portions of some of the RV spaces within that 10-foot buffer area, and the applicant can correct the plans to bring them into compliance. And I can give you like an overview of the building permit process so you can get a sense of the context if you would like me to go into that.
I don't know that we need it because we've heard this one before. So,
So that's the extent of my report. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
And we have a report from Building Safety as well.
Do you have the timeline for the case, for this case that you shared, the dates? Do you have that written down?
It is in the appeal recommendation report that's in the council file, but we can provide it.
Okay, there's a number of documents.
Yes,
There's so many. I may miss the timeline, but it'd be useful to know where I should look on the council files for that.
Okay, we'll hear from building safety, then we'll hear from the appellants, the applicants, and then public, and then we'll move into closed session.
Good morning, council members. My name is Alan. I'm safety. I wasn't aware about the report. Of course, I never.
I can't hear you.
I wasn't aware of providing the report, so I can answer any questions you have regarding the RV.
Okay, so you just want to be available for questions, is that right?
Sure.
Okay, that's fine. You wanted to make sure you had the opportunity. So then before we move to council questions, we're going to clear a little bit of the table for the moment. We're going to hear from the applicant. Appellants first. They can have up to 3 minutes. 3 minutes to respond. So is there anyone here representing the If you are, come forward. If you're represented, it will be time also for the public, of course.
Hello, my name's Nicole. I filed the appeal. I have these items for you. There's on the lower right corner. There's numbers. Some of the images.
Okay, so you're the appellant. So 3 minutes.
Okay. So the first issue is number 1. Which is the unpermitted buildings in the 10-foot buffer, image 1, and LADBS was notified.
We could set the clock. Sorry, can we set the clock? Is the apologize, but
okay.
Make sure you get all your time. So just
Thank you.
If not, I can use an old-fashioned iPhone to time it. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
All right, begin.
Okay, so unpermitted buildings in the 10-foot buffer, image number 1. LADBS was notified that the developer had built 3 unpermitted structures inside the required 10-foot buffer zone. This is a direct violation of public benefit standard number 5. LADBS now says construction is not yet completed and they'll check compliance later, but the violation has already occurred and buildings are standing today in an area where nothing is allowed to be built. We are asking to acknowledge that LADBS is failing to enforce the approved plans. The violations clearly invalidate the project public benefit claim. So why is this developer being allowed to ignore the rules and every other applicant must follow? I also would like to speak about the interim control ordinance that was recently entered on October 31st, 188-753. The city made it clear that the RV parks under this current regulation framework pose an immediate threat to public health, safety, and welfare. The ordinance own finding explains that RV parks are transient uses and that bring significant impacts incompatible with established residential neighborhoods like ours. In Green Meadows West, we already know that those impacts look like increased noise, intrusive lighting, heavy vehicle traffic, parking overflow, dust, and circulation hazards. These are not minor inconveniences. These are direct threats to pedestrian safety, neighborhood stability, and the quality of life for families who live nearby. Despite these well-documented concerns, the CPC's partial denial and partial approval of our neighborhood's appeal failed to address the serious issues we raised: infrastructure strain, environmental impacts, and clear inconsistencies with existing land use policies. And now, with Ordinance 188-753 in effect, the city has formally acknowledged that our zoning and building codes are not adequate to protect communities from the adverse effects of RV parks. The urgency clause of this ordinance specifically warns of current and immediate threat posed by allowing these kinds of projects to move forward. For the city to proceed with this development now would directly contradict the intent of its own newly adopted law. Under Charter Section 245, the council has both authority and the responsibility to veto and remand this decision so that the planning department can halt further permits and ensure no RV park projects advance until updated zoning, building, and fire codes are in place. The city has stated plainly that these uses are dangerous under current rules. Today is the moment to act consistently with those findings. On behalf of the residents of Green Meadows West, all neighborhoods facing similar threats, I respectfully urge you to protect our communities, uphold the ordinance, and remand CPC's decision. Thank you for your time and commitment to safeguarding our neighborhoods and all of Los Angeles. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. If the appellant wishes to come forward, we'll have 3 minutes as well. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, members, and Rahman, my name is Benjamin Resnick with the law firm of Jeffrey Mangles Butler Mitchell. I represent the applicant, and here we are again on Groundhog Day. This project was issued permits in early 2024. The project was built, it's 90% done, and then appeals were filed. The city council, as you saw by the timeline, instructed the building and safety department not to issue the supplemental permit, which corrected all these technical things about setbacks and where you can have things and what have you. So that was stopped, and that's what the project ended. And there are two paths here. We had to file a lawsuit, which we did because of the council action, which we won a few weeks ago, and now the city decided to appeal that decision. Great. We crossed the appeal, and we're asking the Court of Appeal to determine that this is a housing project. HCD thinks it's a housing project, and we think it's a housing project. And if we're right, then the city's actions to date amount to bad faith under the Housing Accountability Act of the state. The second track of what's going on here is the neighbors filed an appeal of a permit that was not issued, it was sitting. So everything is hypothetical. When the City Planning Commission, for the second time, heard this case a month or so ago, when they says they grant the appeal, all they're saying is just make sure you plan check it correctly. No violations have occurred. The plans are consistent. All the performance standards are met. And so what are we doing here? How many more times does the city council need to ask the same question until what? You get a different answer? It's now been 4 times you've asked planning and building and safety and the planning commission, does this need a CUP? And affirmatively, everybody tells you no, as the judge did a month and a half ago as well. That issue is done. You don't need a CUP. You can't keep coming and asking the same question over and over, hoping to get a different answer. At some point, you've got to let it go and move on. We have families waiting to move in. UCLA study recently showed that 1 million Americans live in RVs as their permanent home. This is not, I know it's called a park, but in reality, these RVs get assembled and attached. They attach to all of the infrastructure, and they have a parking spot for the vehicle to move around. But they have mailboxes. This is where people live. Not everyone can afford an $800,000 home, but they can afford a $100,000 RV to live in. And the council's policy has been to get RVs off the streets. You adopted those policies, yet you spent 1.5 years stopping 45 families from moving into an RV park, brand new, clean, up to code, approved by HCD of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have, there may be members of the public who wish to speak on this item. Please come forward. You can occupy the chairs that are here. You have 1 minute, 2 minutes each, because there are 3 minutes in one. We can just go, and so after you speak, please vacate the chair so that if somebody else is here to speak, they can occupy that chair, and not just ask people who are here to just filter in as the chairs become available. We'll start on the left and we'll work our way to the right. So my left to your right.
right, go ahead, sir. Conflicting planning. Your images are 1 and 3. Your images are 1 and 3. One of the most serious issues before the Plum Committee is breaking down between LADBS and city planning. Planning cleared the P1 site plan March 2024, which shows a complaint of 10-foot landscape buffer under the LAMC 1400A7, which was later revoked on October 2025. But LADBS approved a conflicting sheet of P4 that added utility islands and a 36 by 24 foot electrical buffer directing inside the buffer without ever sending it back to planning. This isn't a minor oversight. Planning has already flagged the site for a performance standard violation, yet LADBS moves forward independently approving zoning element plannings that never reviewed. This undermines both the CPC finding and the public benefit criteria. LADBS cannot provide planning determinations unilaterally. Until these procedural errors are corrected, both departments verifying compliance. This project cannot proceed. LADBS can bypass planning, who is safeguarding the integrity of the city approval. Utility islands misidentified for public utilities. Image 3. LADBS claims public utility structures are allowed in the buffer zoning or zone under LAMC 1222A2. But this doesn't apply here. These aren't public utilities. These are private RV pickup structures installed inside the buffer zone. The Planning Commission was cleared. The Planning Commission was cleared. The 10-foot buffer remains free of all structures.
Loss of public benefit status to project now requires some. These projects bypass public hearings by claiming it met all 12 performance under LAMC Section 40.00A7. But today, multiple standards numbers 3, 4, 5, and 9 have been violated simultaneously. Under the municipal code that disqualifies the project from public benefit status, a development that no longer meets mandatory standards cannot proceed under ministerial approval. Once eligibility is lost, the law requires a conditional use permit, triggering environmental review, public hearing, and full scrutiny of circulation, parking, and density. None of that has happened here. Some has the authority and obligation to uphold the integrity of the public benefit over. The only legally sensible path forward is to reclassify this as a public case and require full public review. If this project no longer qualifies, why is it still being treated as ministerial? RV capacity, 46 approved versus 48 to 55 built, refer to image 2 and 5. The approved plans show 46 RV spaces, yet LADBS October report says the stall count is not enforceable, calling it merely diagrammatic. At the October 9th hearing, planning staff agreed, saying they don't regulate RV space count. So who does? Because no one is enforcing it, the developer has already expanded the site to 55 RV spaces, confirmed by the number of utility pedestals installed. A public benefit project must meet all 12 performance standards. But if no department is regulating the size or density of RV stalls, how can this be considered ministerial or qualified as public benefit? If LADBS and planning won't enforce the limit, then who will? We urge Plum to assign responsibility. Thank you.
Speaker. Hello, I'm Ryan Spradlin of 15-year resident. I'm here to talk about the interim control ordinance. How it requires a full notice on this one. The interim control ordinance was adopted because the city regulated RV parks and residential zones and stronger oversight and safer approval pathways. Under the ICO, any RV project that requires interpretation, correction, and discretionary judgment cannot move forward with permits or occupancy. This project should not have qualified as ministerial because it had violated mandatory performance standards. Both LADBS and planning have acknowledged
unresolved issues with setbacks, buffers, fencing, parking, RV counts, and plan authority. Once a project becomes non-ministerial, it must be processed as a conditional use permit, and CUPs are explicitly prohibited under the ICO. That means the city cannot legally issue further permits or a certificate of occupancy until a CUP is filed and the lease is lifted. This project is frozen by law. If discretionary RV approvals are barred, why is this project still moving forward? Also, to Mr. Resnick's comments about that these RVs are permanent, they are not. They are different. Really cool. They're just sitting. They're not a permanent residence.
Thank you.
Hello, name is Jack. On these three issues, I think in the report, CalGEM recommended that no structures be built on the property. You could argue that RVs aren't a structure. You could argue that they are. I see a problem with, we have three streets that are access points, 240th, 238th, 237th. In the event that an emergency happens and there's some leakage from these underground wells, creates quite the catastrophe. But I see in your descriptions that you defined us as concerned citizens. I can only speak for myself. I'm outraged. I don't see how a city can allow an RV lot into an R1 zone without any public discourse whatsoever. It's an atrocity. And I'm tired of being branded as a community that doesn't have any compassion. I'm not sure about you all, but I've taken in 3 homeless people into my home in my life. 2 were friends on drugs, bad off, backfired on me. 1 was a complete stranger. You know what that complete stranger ended up doing? He got a job in 2 weeks, and he's a chef for the Las Vegas Raiders. So you can't define me as being part of a community that doesn't have any compassion. I do. But as a community, I find it just outlandish that we haven't had any input into what goes on into our neighborhood. And that's wrong. And I expect you to correct that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for what you've done to help people. Are there any other members of the public that are here who wish to speak to this item? Please come forward.
My name's Doug Ross. I'm the park manager of this particular park. I was brought in early on to develop standards and the apartments or anything else. We have a comprehensive background check that every resident will go through. We have a lease that is as strong as any apartment lease with rules and regulations that that can be we're not looking to make a homeless encampment. Our target is people that just been priced out of the housing market. I'm one of those people. I lost my home in 2019 with my health family, and I couldn't survive it. And I had a mobile home that I used for vacations, and I had to move into it. Took me 2 months to find a place to go. There are no parks there. They're back on years waiting list. And that park was I'm going to, hold on a second, I gotta get my thoughts together here. There is just a shortage all the way around. There just aren't enough spaces for the people that are looking for every single day. The people I see are not transient. They want a long-term place to stay. They're retirees. They're disabled. They're young couples with a young child. These are the people I live with. The traveling nurses. We have people that these are people, 5 days a week, long hours.
Thank you for sharing. Next speaker.
My name is Stuart Silver.
everyone on this committee knows, shows that to be able to make the right decision by yourself. I feel there was a lot of outside influence on this for no reason. We did everything we were supposed to do. We got the permits before I purchased the place. We did a phase 1, a phase 2, and then we got CalGem to actually do the reporting on the property, drilling holes and everything else. That's way beyond the we furnished this to everybody from the beginning. I understand you guys are also in a position to choose the faith, the livelihood, and the decision where people live. This project is what LA needs. This is a housing project. People there sign leases, they get mail, they get a parking space next to every single RV. When the property was purchased, we made sure everything was done right. Get the approvals from every department in the city. We have HCD, who's a governing body. The city's only obligation is to zone the property for us. HCD is our governing body, House and Community Development. They're the ones who approve the project, make sure everything's done right, sewer, water, electric. That's what this is about. I heard people talk about 3 illegal structures. Those are tough sheds. The tough sheds that they sell, they're 9 feet by 11 feet. The ordinance is you can have a shed on the property 10 feet by 12 feet. We use it for storage. We use it for our building, whatever we have in the way of building and all the stuff that we were building. I can't even believe that the Councilman Costa would put and the Plum Committee in this type of a position. I guess that's it.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Steve Roblicki. I live across the street from the project, and I'm in the council veto and the city planning commission decision on the proposed passing. The city has formally recognized that RV parks safety, welfare under the current inadequate regulations. It's clear that these use creates impact noise, heavy vehicle traffic, always in front of my house, parking overflows, that as well, dust circulation, and a whole bunch of other things going on with wooden pallets strewn about the outside of the property. The problem is that the idea what they bring up is not a bad idea. It's that being shoehorned into a residential neighborhood the way it is no different than what you guys are dealing with on Prop 89 here, or whatever that SB, because the issue is not complying with it, but what makes sense where you're going to put this stuff. If you're just going to build a 5-story building someplace and destroy an area, well, you're already considering that now. Why do that with an RV park right shoehorn across the street from residential houses?
That's your time. We have to give everybody the same amount of time. That's your 2 minutes. You have to give everybody the same amount of time. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the clock in front of me, but I apologize. Please give him an extra 10 seconds for my interruption and put the clock.
Yeah,
I apologize. I'm trying to
come 0 to 33 there, so.
I just looked up and saw it was at 0, so I apologize. Go ahead.
Oh, I can go. All right. So anyway, that's the point is to say is that let's be smart with what we are trying to do for our neighborhood, like we're going to do with the 89 law that's coming out. So I would say, look, let's look at this. Proceeding now would undermine the very protections the city just put in place. Under Charter Section 245, the council should veto and remand the decision and direct planning to hold further permits until updated zoning, building, and fire code complete. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, and I apologize for the timer issue. Are there any other members of the public that are here who wish to speak to this item? Please come forward. Okay. Next, then we'll go if Councilmember McCoskey's office wishes to speak. give you the floor. Welcome.
Afternoon, panelists. Good afternoon. My name is Pamela Thornton, and I'm the Director of Planning and Land Use for Council District 15. So I'm speaking today on behalf of Council Member McOsker, who could not be here in person. Excuse me. So I just wanted to state for the record, on behalf of Council Member McOsker, this particular item comes before committee today based on a series of appeals and subsequent council action related to RV Park at 23416 South President Avenue in Harbor City. This case represents significant questions regarding compliance with the LA Municipal Code, the public benefit performance standards, the accuracy of the submitted plans, and the proper procedural pathway for a project of this type in a single family zone. Councilmember McOsker's position is straightforward. This is not a housing project. The as-built project does not match the plans approved. There are multiple performance standards that have not been met. And based on this, Councilmember McOsker's goal is not necessarily to stop the project, but to ensure the proper oversight and evaluation of the project is reviewed and that there's transparency and enforceable conditions that are required by the code. So I want to state, because it's a couple of things that were stated by some folks that did present today. Based on the CPC condition of approval of LOD, I highlighted some language that I think that's important here. It says if it complies with the required performance standards, if it complies. So we see the inconsistencies and there is non-compliance. So if there's non-compliance, what is the next step? So the council member is adamant that if there's non-compliance, that's the perfect reason why the conditional use permit should be required. And under number 3 in the letter of determination, it also states that a public benefit project, until all of the required performance standards under the code are met, then there's an action there. But we see that there's inconsistencies and all of the requirements of the performance standards have not been met. So those are the overall points that the council member has been speaking of, and I just wanted to state that for the record on this behalf. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we go into closed session, it's not my building safety does want to make comments.
Yeah, thank you, council member. Yeah, this is Alan Allenson from Building Safety. I just wanted to clarify some of the items and performance standards concerning the report, particularly prevailing setback calculations. So CPC report referred, I guess, the claims what the prevailing setback calculations were done incorrectly, and the report mentions for the applicant to return back to Building Safety to verify the calculations.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with the microphone. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is that in regards to the prevailing setback calculations, the prevailing setback calculations were, we would typically ask the applicant to verify the calculations. According to the plans, we relied on them to verify what the setback is for the front yard. It was not clear correctly from the CPC. So when it was asked to, we did an independent study on setback calculations, and it was actually greater than what the provided on their plans. So the applicant provided, I believe, 20 plans, and based off our calculations, it was actually 20 and a half feet.
It was, I'm sorry. You're saying they didn't have enough of a setback?
They did not have enough of the setback. So again, the plan showed 20 feet. And based off our calculations, all independent calculations, going back to the records, it turned out to be 20.5.
So you're saying it's 0.5. Is that something? Is that the kind of thing that happens? And
Yeah, typically, if the calculations are obscure or not, not clear, done incorrectly, we would ask the applicant to verify the calculations. I know.
and just, I mean, what is the impact? You're saying the miscalculation, but that happens all the time. So what's the impact of what you're saying on this?
The implications is that we're no longer compliant with performance standard number 3 and 4.
They're what?
They're not compliant with two of the performance standards.
I'm sorry. But they were when DBS first reviewed their applications, they found that they were in compliance.
That's right.
And so, whose error is this?
Well, it was an error in the applicant side, maybe just an oversight in building safety and the planning review.
I think you're saying there's an error in the applicant side.
Well, yeah, they didn't provide the correct analysis.
But you didn't catch that for 2 years. You're catching it now.
That's right. Right. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And it's a difference.
That's right.
And obviously we're gonna go into closed session to attorney to better understand the implications of that and a number of other things in this case, because a lot of this legal questions. Mr. Resnick, if you wish to speak for a minute on that, I will give both the applicant and the appellant an additional minute to respond to the new report, which was not. So, Sarah, to give both sides a minute on that. Go ahead.
Thank you. Benjamin Resnick again speaking. Thank you. This is a plan check process. If we have to provide an extra half a foot, the plans will show that. If they don't, we don't get a certificate of occupancy on inspection. No inspections occurred. Now, we know we did it right, and for 2 years it's been right. In the report you just got from Building and Safety, the written report doesn't say we're off, but let's say we are. Then there's a supplemental permit waiting to be issued. The City Council stopped from issuing. Those plans, I'm not even sure if those are the plans being referred to. He may be looking at original plans. The supplemental plans were done to address the plan checker's comments, which includes prevailing setbacks. So for all I know, we do have them. But if we don't, it doesn't matter. It gets corrected. And that's where it's going to be built. Nothing is encroaching into the front yard setback. No structures. There's nothing. These are paths for RVs. So this is a plan check map.
Thank you. If the applicant wishes a minute with this information.
And just while the appellant is coming up, I just wanted to ask if DBS could speak to Mr. Resnick's assertion that the issue with plan check, if there's a correction that needs to be made, it can be done, and it's a separate issue from the.
That's correct. Yeah, it is a plan check issue. Any discrepancies in the plan can be resolved via.
Which is the normal course of things.
This is a normal.
Can be resolved.
Yes.
So, like for example, if a project, because now we're being asked to consider legal matters, not just like because we've supported, community members have spoken before, the community concerns raised by the council office. We have before us 3 different issues. I just want to understand the facts. In cases where this kind of discrepancy comes forward normally, is that when the project is stopped, or they just correct it and move forward? What is this mean? What's the
It's a normal
import of
course.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the importance of it is that there is an open supplemental permit application. It's an issue. It could be resolved. They can.
I'm not asking in this case.
But that's not what's before us. That supplemental permit is not before us. Before we get into too much, I gave the appellant, like to get the applicant to have a minute. Got to keep it balanced. Applicant at the minute, the appellant to come forward with a minute. Then we'll go into discussion, and then we will go into closed session.
So, I don't understand how we can keep revisiting their mistakes and allowing them to keep repairing what they've already messed up on. We have an issue that we brought in front of you many times, and we don't have our lawyer here right now. This is the people that live here, and all these little things they keep bringing up, $1 million or $100,000 RVs. This is not a luxury RV. This is a facility that they're going to be bringing people from the streets or people that they rent their RVs to. And if there's a legitimate mistake, there's a legitimate mistake, whether it's a half an inch, a foot, a yard, whatever, it's a mistake. It shouldn't be repaired. It should be held back. There shouldn't be more supplemental permits or anything moving forward. They've already had an opportunity to create all this and do this. Why do they keep getting an opportunity to keep making repairs? Nothing is working. What we're doing and everything we've done is bona fide, it's real, it's happening. Quality of work is lacking on their part, and they keep allowing buffers, whether it's a half an inch or it needs to be maintained. It needs to be held accountable, and they shouldn't be allowed to move forward with anything else because they've got an ample amount of time. We've been revisiting this. How many times have we revisited this? And then you say, well, go back and fix it. And then we come back and fix it again. TPS, they've had plenty of opportunity to fix it.
Time equal for
we put in 25 complaints at the very beginning to take this step on. And not once did TPS come back and acknowledge us, ask us about the complaints, and even tell us that the complaints were taken care of. Now we keep bringing complaints to them, and it's never addressed. They brought it 3 or 4 times to the table, and they all say,
thank you. Yes, have the departments clarify. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify that the plans that we're talking about are associated with supplemental, but the applicant is correct that we are in the prevention process right now. So any irregularities can be corrected at this stage, and once they are corrected, then a building permit can be issued. And then applicant would have the go-ahead to develop the project, after which Building and Safety would inspect to see if the development is compliant with the building permit that has been issued, and then a certificate of occupancy would be issued.
Building permit, those plan checks are not what's.
Pardon?
What's before us is it's not the supplemental. We're looking at.
Well, it's both. It's the appeal is for both permits, the initial permit and the supplement. And the plans that we have reviewed are the updated plans that were submitted with the application for the supplemental building permit.
Okay.
But they can be corrected. They can be updated, corrected. They can be made to come into compliance.
And to follow up on our typical procedure, the violation was brought up during plan check. The plan checker would request the applicant to revise the plan, address the violation. From there, the revised plans resubmit for obtain the permit.
Okay. And obviously, there's a lawsuit in the middle of all this that we're going to talk about, which is related to all of this, which we can't talk, which we have to talk about in closed session. Colleagues, anything else in open session? Before we move to closed session? Then what I'm going to ask that we do is ask everyone to leave the room who is not the attorneys or part of the closed session. We will then have a discussion and we will bring back the room before we take any votes for a final discussion. But our discussion with our city attorney about a legal matter has to be done in closed session. I apologize for the inconvenience. But I also want to highlight that the Planning Commission and the Department of Building Safety are highlighting that there are some conditions that are not clear. And I urge that Building and Safety vigorously enforce all performance standards in this project, and that they work through the process to make sure that the applicant is coming to compliance. And with that recommendation, we can call. Unless there's any other comments.
Blumenfield.
Eli.
Hut. Aye. 3 ayes, and that item is approved.
Next, we have, I believe, one more item. Is that right?
Apologies, Chair. For item 16, if I could just clarify what the committee's recommendation was. It was to deny the appeal filed by concerned residents of Green Meadows West, Harbor City, and thereby sustain the Planning Commission's determination dated October 30th, 2025.
Yes, that's exactly. Okay. You said it much more clearly. I was getting a sense of where we are. Yes. Okay. So now we have one more item, I believe.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, and for item number 14 and 15, there was no vote. That was taken. There was no vote. That was closed.
I don't believe city attorney is anything.
Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Okay. That takes us to item 17. And this is item 17. It's a mixed-use project where the council in certain jurisdiction, the timeline at the request of the applicant, primarily to get the final decision as quick as possible. We'll have a very brief report from the planning department. I believe. What's that? Okay. A very brief report on this.
Sorry?
If we could just give us a brief report on this.
About 9-10 minutes.
What's that?
9-10 minutes.
If we do it even quicker, that would be great.
Sure.
Sorry if you had a whole thing for that. It's been a long time.
That's fine.
I may lose more. I mean, I'll just say it's a project in the Warner Center in my district. It's the kind of thing the Warner Center specific plan calls for: high density with ground floor commercial near transit. So it's a project that I'm in support of, and I do know that the applicant has requested a couple of amendments, but at the last minute we're going to look at those amendments moving forward. And my goal here is to just approve what's before us, and we'll work out the amendments between now and council, so we don't have to deal with those very nuanced issues. But my team will work with the applicant on the nuanced issues between now and council. But my goal is to just get this project moved forward and approved. So with that, I gave the setup. You can just add a little color to that, and we'll move forward.
Good morning, or good afternoon, council members. Sheila Tony from the Planning Department. So before you today is a multiple approvals case that involves a density bonus review and a project permit compliance for a project with a specific plan. The project is located at 6464 North Canova Avenue. In the Warner Center plan, it is a mixed-use project consisting of 276 units above ground floor retail with 21 units to be reserved for very low income units. So the actions are for the environmental review. A project is within the scope of the program AR for Warner Center. 2 entitlements, which we have is a density bonus review with 1 off-menu incentive and 4 waivers of development. The details in the staff report if you have questions on that. And then the second entitlement is a project permit compliance for a project within the Warner Center plan. So like I said, the project consists of 272,800 and something square foot mixed use development. We have 276 units, and then 7% of that would be reserved for very low incomes, along with ground floor commercial spaces, about 800 and 8,600 square feet of commercial spaces. Okay, let's see here. We have about 400 parking spaces. There's going to be plentiful of open space, about 31,247 square feet of that, including publicly accessible open space, which is open space that's open to the public. I think everything is in the staff report. I think we're just going to go to recommendations. So staff recommends finding that the project is within the scope of the Warner Center program EIR, approving the density bonus review with the one-off menu incentive for waivers of development standards, a project permit compliance within the Warner Center plan, as well as adopting attached conditions of approval and findings. Thank you.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, this is a project in my district. It's a big project. It's going to have a lot of housing, mostly low-income housing. And I'm going to recommend that we approve the recommendations of planning department report dated November 5, 2025, and uploaded on November 6, 2025. And that worked with there were some additional things that developer wanted to came up this weekend, as I understand it, that we would work with them forward to get those amendments are appropriate to get that done before council, but we won't slow this down at all. This, my recommendation is to approve it as is and to work on that stuff in the next. Okay, colleagues, any comments or questions? We can call the roll. Are you good with the recommendations, or you need?
Would you like me to read the recommendations into the record? Okay. So, for the purposes of the city clerk, the recommendations are as follows. 1, find in the independent judgment of the decision maker after consideration of the whole of the administrative record that the project is within the scope of the Warner Center 2035 program EIR. Pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15162 and 15168, the project is within the scope of the program approved earlier in the Warner Center specific plan. The EIR adequately describes the activity for purposes of CEQA. The city has incorporated all feasible mitigation measures from the program EIR on the project. No major revisions are required to the program EIR, and no subsequent EIR or negative declaration is required for approval of the project. 2, approve the density bonus / affordable housing incentive program compliance review for the mixed-use project totaling 276 dwelling units over ground floor commercial uses, with the following off-menu incentive and 4 waiver of development standards. 1, an off-menu incentive permitting a floor level of the highest residential unit to be at least 74 feet above the adjacent grade. 2, a waiver of development standards permitting 8,592 square feet of non-residential floor area. 3, a waiver of development standard permitting a 47-foot front setback along Canoga Avenue. 4, a waiver of development standard permitting a 0-foot landscape buffer along the eastern perimeter of the building. And finally, a waiver of development standard waiving out of the requirement of 1 tree to be planted for every 30 feet of required landscape buffer along the eastern perimeter of the building. And then also, recommendation 3 is to approve a permit compliance review for the demolition of the associated office building and surface parking and the construction of the mixed-use development. And then finally, adopt the attached conditions of approval and adopt the attached findings.
Okay. With that, we can call it.
Blumenfield.
Aye.
Hutt. Aye. Raman. Raman. Yes. That is 3 yes, 3 ayes, and this item is approved.
Confirm that clears the desk.
Yes.
This meeting is adjourned.
thing is that I had to turn this on because I still have to end the video back on, so everything was yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what else do we do, right?
All right. All right.
That was my last.
Yeah, a lot of work. Hi, how are you? Good. How are you? Okay.
Yes, no, when we figure out the language for sure.